we're ready. I was telling somebody this is more of a selfish choice that we've come here. It was for me, so I apologize if you don't. I've never been here. I've read about it. I've watched about it, and because we're doing the baptism at our hotel, we had this extra time, and Ari was kind enough to get us up here. This is a great story. As he said, the name of this mountain is Gamla, which is Aramaic for camel. You can't really tell, straight on, but if you were over there or over here, you would see the hump. When you get home, Google it. Google Gamla, and you'll see a beautiful picture of it. But as you know, this is called, and as he explained, this is called the Masada of the North. That doesn't mean anything to you right now. It will when we go to Masada, but you'll see the same result. But there was a Jewish revolt and around AD 66, and some Jews came here and set up the fortress. You can see down there where they had all the fortress set up and things like that. And it was hard to get to. It was hard to overturn. So the Romans came here, surrounded it. They weren't successful the first time, and as Ari said, they had one thing the Jews did. They had time, and they could wait for the other Romans to show up. And that's exactly what they did. A man by the name of Judas. Judas was a very common name back then, just as Jesus was. Judas led this revolt and took thousands up on that mountain and fought back against the Romans. Well, as he said, finally the Romans broke through the gate. Remember we said the most vulnerable place to any place is the gates. They got through the gates, and as he said, instead of just surrendering, thousands jumped off the side of this mountain and committed suicide. And so you might say, what does this have to do about anything? Believe it or not, there is one verse in the Bible. That's why I love seeing this, because one little verse, one mention of something that you would never even catch. But here we are, we're actually seeing it. We know the history behind it. Notice it's found in Acts chapter 5. And in Acts chapter 5, if you remember the story, Peter and John, they're just preaching. The Bible says Peter is so powerful that even when his shadow touches somebody, it heals them of any infirmity or disease that they have. And so Peter is preaching, and the Pharisees, Sadducees, they don't like it. They throw him in prison. An angel gets him out of prison. The next day, they're in the temple preaching again. And this just upset the council, the Sanhedrin, the high priests. And so they have this council brought together. And they tell Peter, you stop preaching in God's name. And Peter responds, it's better to obey God than fear you. We're going to keep doing it. So they get this big council together. And they're talking. And there's a man by the name of Gamla. That was a teacher of Paul. But he's at this council. And the Bible says this in Acts chapter 5, verse 37. Just one verse. They ask him, what do you think about these guys who are preaching and causing these problems in Jerusalem? And Gamaliel says this. He said, these guys are just like another man from the past. He said, after this man rose up, Judas of Galilee. That's him. This is the Judas we're talking about. Judas, in the days of the taxing, he drew away many people after him, and they all perished, all of them, even as many as obeyed him. They were all dispersed. So he was saying this, the same thing that happened to Judas on Gamla, if these guys, Peter and John, aren't of God, the same thing's going to happen to them. They're going to perish, and all the people who follow them are going to perish too. Well, we know Peter and John, they thrived. They didn't have the same outcome as Judas and them. But this is the story. I mean, it's all happened right here. Just that little verse brings all of this to life. So we'll stop there, and I want you to take pictures. Take a look at Gamla, the camel hump mountain.